Evening, everyone. Welcome to Method in Madness. Today, we are going to talk about something that is really, really maddening, and that's noise. Noise is something that we are always exposed to, and music is something that we ought to expose ourselves to. How to beat the noise that's happening around all of us, and how to embrace music, how to embrace the right kind of sound that helps us grow, helps our children grow into creative individuals. Today, the topic is very close to my heart for two reasons. One, because I myself am a singer, I like singing. We used to have a band a couple of years ago where I used to be the lead singer. Um, and music is very, very close to my heart. And the second reason why I'm really excited about today's discussion and conversation is because today's guest is one of my oldest colleagues, Debarjo Banerjee. Debarjo is a radio artist and a producer. Debarjo is a radio professional and a sound engineer from Kolkata, and he is at present working with TV Today Network India Limited. He's a graduate from Calcutta University. He's also a voice actor and audio enthusiast. An ardent listener of orchestral music, his other interests lie in audio drama, productions, and recording for audiovisual essays and documentaries. I met Debarjo in 2006 when I started my internship with a radio channel in Calcutta. And today I present you Debarjo Banerjee from Calcutta.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Debarjo. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And, really nice to be here in this live.
Thank you, Debarjo. So this is for everybody who's watching us. We call Debarjo Joe. So Joe and I, we are going to talk for the next 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. And then we'll be open to your questions. Please keep participating in the conversation through the live chat. And we'll love to take your questions at the end of the program. So, Joe, let's begin.
Yes.
So, we are talking music today.
Right.
And we're talking the creative development of children, and not just children, of human beings through sound and music. Mm-hmm. Let me ask the first question. Why is music important? I know music is important. You know music is important. Mm-hmm. Many of the viewers who are watching us know that music is important. But if we had to convey this to somebody who didn't know why music was important, what would we say? What would you say?
Well, I would start by saying what I like, music is basically sound, right? So sound and music go together. So why is music important? I think, and sound per se is important. In the words of the great Asian, one of the great sound engineers of Asia, the great Sir Daman Sood, he once said, I heard him say it, he said that the Lord said, let there be light. And then there was light, right? So important thing to note here is Lord said, let there be light. So saying is somebody heard that and there was light. So sound was more important than light. I mean, it was more primal, more primitive. So I believe sound is the most important ingredient in the experience of life we have. And so music is basically based out of sound, and music is I think, life speaks through music. Even if a person doesn't understand the language of a song that you're singing, maybe a folk song, maybe something, anything, any audio, any language, but music transcends all that. And music is basically the binding force of life. So I believe anything that works with music is much more better. The experience with music is much better than with anything else. You wouldn't cancel music out. You can cancel the noise out, but you cannot cancel the music out.
Right. Debarjo, we know that music is important, but how does music help in creative thinking? And now, this is something which I do as a part of the drama program, as an activity in the drama program that I run, is that
Yeah.
I expose my children to various kinds of music.
Hmm.
And I ask them to visualize while they're listening to music which is without lyric.
Yeah.
Um, that's one way I take them to the world of imagination.
Mm.
How do you extend that, or is there any other way where actually creative thinking develops through sound and then music?
Yes, immensely. I believe music is definitely, it transforms a human being. And like you said, you know, you expose the children to different kinds of music. So music helps in structured thinking, because music in itself is a geometric structure. If you look at music, it's nothing but a collection of notes, with notes which are nothing but tones, notes which have a certain duration and a certain pitch in sound. So basically, you can imagine that music is basically time depicted in life. You can have a picture, you can have a single static picture, but you cannot have a single dot of sound. To perceive it, you need to go through sound. So it's nothing but mathematics and structure. And the more structured the music is, the more beautiful the structure of music is, the more thoughtful the person will be once the experience is over. So experience of it, once he goes through that musical experience, I think it's much more structured. I think the thinking becomes much more clearer. And music has this mysterious way of working into your, like, playing with your psychology in ways that it is basically, it forms a reserve of information which was which you could not imagine that you knew before. And music can tap into that. Music can transcend all forms of space and time. So I believe musical thinking, especially in children, young people, little people, they have a very open mind. They have a very, very volatile way of thinking, and they have a very free sense of life. They don't come in, like, they don't have these obstacles
Or
uh,
baggages?
or
Hmm.
baggage. Absolutely. So they don't have these obstacles or baggages or hindrances in thinking. So they can be molded very easily or directed to a certain way and means of thinking. So I think music does that, definitely that, because it's basically science. It's basically mathematics and pure geometry
When
in a
you
very
talk
beautiful
about Yes, when you talk about mathematics and music, who comes to my mind is Professor Manjul Bhargava, who won the
way. Oh yes.
Fields Medal award, and he teaches maths through poetry and tabla.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
strange. I think I've never seen a mathematician. I've seen, of course, nowadays you have stand-up mathematicians, as in stand-up comics, you have stand-up mathematicians. But I've never seen a maths professor playing a tabla, and that too with such engaging conversations as Manjul Bhargav. It's a great sight. It's a feast for the eyes.
Yes, this is for all the viewers. If you get a chance, please look up Manjul Bhargav. He has a number of maths discourses and general interviews, which you can watch. And he talks in detail about maths relationship of music with maths. Debarjo, one very silly question, maybe, but I
Mhm.
might as well ask you the difference between sound and music.
Huh. You see, I can summarize that very simply by saying that like just like information. How is
Mhm.
information? Like, for example, everything is information around us, like a bunch of numbers. Maybe I can see on the screen there are a bunch of numbers here and there everywhere. So that is basically like sound. Sound has information, but only when that data means something to us, something meaningful. Like, for example, my date of birth, or maybe a particular date, or this the date of this live that's happening. So it's information for me, it's important to me, or in some way will be important to me in the future. That is information. So music is just like that. Sound, everything is sound. We can hear this sound around us. Sometimes it's noisy, sometimes it's background, like, noise and a lot of clutter happening. But once in a while, when everything comes together, when the notes fall in place, when the geometry is right, when the numbers manipulate themselves, they become music. And that's the difference between sound and music. Music is exactly that. Noise, in fact, the definition of music, in the terms of physics, is basically is a pleasant form of sound, a pleasant form of, or it's an orderly form of sound, whereas noise is just like chaos. Anything that has a harsh tone to it might be classified as noise, but music is something that's pleasant to hear, or maybe something meaningful to us. Maybe sometimes it's meaningful to a particular group of people. Like, for example, if you listen to a lot of death metal and a lot of metal music, rock music per se, a lot of distortion happening. So a person who has sensitive like a sort of sensitivity towards music might not enjoy all of that. But to a person who understands that or appreciates that kind of music, I think that's much more musically engaging. So that is the difference between sound and music. Everything is sound, but only the packets of especially packaged forms of experience can be classified as music. And it's very, very human. It's very, very human. By human, I don't mean a human being. I mean, it can be anyone. It can be a plant, it can be a dog, it can be a cat. Any life form which can tune into that form, that sensibility, can be called human. And it's a very human experience which they go through, not only a human being, not only a person per se.
Right.
uh,
Um, when you talked about death metal, when we were growing up, Joe,
yeah,
there were some, and we were in our teens. There were a group of boys and girls who loved metal, and there were a group of boys and girls who loved Hindustani classical.
yeah.
So does it also have to do with the way you think? The way a person thinks.
Yeah, I think so. I feel way a person, uh, not so much as a person where the person grows up. I think the inclinations toward, like, for example, if you are into sports, you would like a form of sports, but maybe not the other form of sport. Just
Hmm.
like that. I mean, it's a genre. And I think what defines a person's like and dislike is basically what he finds interesting in that, which structures do appeal to him. For example, some of my friends, I love orchestral music, like chamber music, symphony music, music which was from the Romance period, uh, like a lot of classical music, not necessarily Indian classical music, but European classical music, or maybe from the bygone era, which can be classified as Baroque chamber
Hmm.
music. So
Hmm.
that kind of music, I love to hear that. I would not go if there would be not a single day where I'm not listening to that kind of music, even for a short period of time. So I believe that is very important. That's the way you are. That's your inclination. That's like that happens. You find an interest for a particular thing in that structure of music. Somebody finds it's very invigorating listening to live music, like on
Hmm.
stage. Some
Hmm.
people like to listen to folk music, like country music. Some people like to listen to music without any lyrics or anything, like maybe tribal music,
Hmm.
like the Nordic songs, or the Nordic like maybe some Mexican music, or maybe the cumbia. So there might be a different taste for everyone. It's all music, but people like to classify themselves as that. Because everybody's musical taste is different. It's defined by their own inclinations.
Yeah. What is your musical taste, audience? Let us know what kind of music you like listening to, and you love listening to, and that will kind of give us a canvas to kind of move on and talk about some recommendations that Debarjo will give all of us for us to listen to, and also for our children to listen to. Debarjo, we were talking about listening and consuming the
Yeah.
other day. So
Mm-hmm.
consumption of music and listening to music. So there is so much of music happening all over, and
Mm-hmm.
somehow when I listen to the Hindi film songs nowadays, all of them seem to sound the same. There's nothing different in I mean, in any song. So you listen to any, latest song, and you can sing another song to it, or everything sounds the same. Whereas when we were, I mean, not even we, when our parents were growing up,
Yeah.
they heard a lot of variety. What
Mm-hmm.
about what about this consumption of music which is not directed or not standardized in some sort?
Mm-hmm.
How do we differentiate between consuming music unattentively and listening to music attentively?
I think, I mean, everything is good. I mean, to every age has its peculiarities. So this age of music is really based on the consumer. Like, it actually started with the recording revolution, like, the way people used to hear music. Now, many years later, I mean, people used to hear live music a lot in the early ages when they could only listen to music using record players. And I think the change happened, the listening changed, because when the media changed, you see, the way the things were like presented to us. Earlier it was like a long playing record, which might have like a collection of like 9, 10 songs. I'm not very sure. 9, 10 songs, both sides, LP discs. Nowadays children wouldn't even know what is that. I don't think my daughter would understand what LP records look like because we have to Google it. Basically, important thing to note here is after that we had cassette tapes which had similar songs like 10 to 12 songs, maybe a little more. And then we had CD-ROMs which had a little more than that, maybe like 20 tracks. And then came the MP3 CDs, which were like data CDs covered with, they could have like hundreds of songs. And then came a little in between somewhere the iPod, which could have thousands of songs. So you have your entire playlist to yourself. You can carry your entire playlist in your pocket. And everything changed after the iPod, the way iPod and iTunes, the Apple universe changed it. And now it's like completely, the thing is completely changed into like, it's spilling everywhere, it's bursting at the seams. It's like it's like an ocean of content that you have now. You can't control it. You don't have any curation happening. Nothing is curated. Only people, there are random people who are curating these playlists. Now you have thousands and maybe millions of songs online, and they're just at your fingertips. So I think the listening medium has converted the content the demand for the content has increased. The artistry cannot keep up with this huge demand that's cropped up in the market. And it's like apps are now calling the shots, like maybe Spotify or some other apps which stream music like Ghana, Savan in India. So these apps basically are like have huge libraries of songs and new artists every day and new genres to follow. It's like too much to consume. And that is the, I think, the key word: too much to consume. That's the key word. If you have too much of anything, it would be like, you would not be able to concentrate on any one single thing. I used to listen to, like, I had access to, when I was growing up, when I was listening to, like, for example, when I was exposed to Mozart, maybe at a very early age, and I was learning the, like a little bit. I learned a little bit of classical piano, like, Western classical notation, reading notations, and that sort of thing. And I had only access to Mozart through one cassette. It was just one cassette having Mozart on one side. I couldn't even read all the names of the pieces which were there. Like, I know them now, but I couldn't understand any of it back then. But it was so charming. I mean, Mozart's music was so charming. And then I heard there was this person who turned deaf after some time. It was Beethoven. It was, I was like, it was so enchanting, all because I had no access to this noise. Like, all
Mhm.
this music playing together or hitting you together, all of them coming to your screen at the same time, is basically a lot of noise. And that, I think, has changed the listeners landscape, the listening landscape. And it's very hard to curate anything nowadays. For example, you can recommend a playlist, like a doctor recommends medicines, prescribes medicine. I prescribe you listen to this music. Maybe you listen to a little bit of Schubert, maybe you listen to a
Mm.
little bit of Tchaikovsky. So these things have cropped up now, and that has transformed music into a consumable, a product. So that's why music is, it doesn't have that value as it used to have before, and so do musicians, because there are so many to follow. I mean, there's no one artist. There are so many artists who have learned, who have, paid their, like, who have paid their homage. They've really studied music. They're really performing music. They're creating music. They're producing music. But all of it, I think, comes down to one thing: that there is too much of this happening, too much of
Mm.
it, too many options. If you have too many options, it really, it's a very, like, scary sometimes experience. I think that has to, like, curb down a little bit, so that people can enjoy a pure form of music, pure music, in very little packets, because you have very little attention. There are so many artists, so many apps on your phone. They just bombard you with these options: do this now, do that now, listen to this music. We are streaming it right now. 24-hour music channels. There used to be 24-hour orchestral music radio stations, which would play classical radio stations in the West. But I mean, listening to that, without, they would publish the playlists on newspapers. It was so beautiful before, but all of it is becoming so mechanical and so robotic, and it's so, it's so everywhere, it's so omnipresent. And I think that has like, maybe it's we don't listen anymore, we consume a lot of it. Like, also the video aspect to it, that every artist needs a video assist with his music, needs the thing of music is no more an experience of sound. It's become an audio visual experience. It has something to do with numbers. It has something to do with it has to top the list or the charts in order to make like, be get noticed.
Mm.
Even if it is not good, even if it is not to your taste, it will definitely pop up in the radio charts. So that's like a very, a little depressing scenario now, I think.
Let's talk about your love, orchestral music or classical, Western
Ah,
classical music.
oh yes,
Um, if you had to recommend a list, now you have a baby daughter,
yes.
and you're a father. So if you
Hmm.
had to recommend a musician to all the parents who are watching us today,
Hmm.
who would you recommend to begin this journey into music and sound with?
I would recommend definitely orchestral music. Why? Because of its transformative power. I don't mean to say that there is only one form of music, or the other. I prefer orchestral music to anything else, because I'm an ardent listener of orchestral music. I follow music. I don't read a lot of music. I can't read a lot of music, but yes, I follow a lot of music. I mean, classical music, and it gives me a lot of joy. And the best thing to understand about classical music is that you don't need a language a crutch of the language. You don't need a language support to give you an understanding of what's happening. It's if you like the music, you like it. If you don't, if you find it's boring, it's too time consuming, it's taking your like concentration off of things, then you can just like tune into some other channel. So I think where we can start is, of course, we can start with the greats like, Chopin, music of Chopin. And also, if you start with Chopin, because Chopin is basically, he's a French composer, and there are many many piano pieces which appeal to different like classes of people. I've seen that, like, it appeals to people who don't understand what kind of music is playing. Like, for example, a person who's not exposed to classical music, orchestral music, even they have this thing with Chopin's music. They react to it. And of course, my idol and everyone's Amadeus Mozart. So he would be, I think Mozart's music has this tremendous transformative power, tremendous way to, especially in children. It instills a sense of structure, it instills a sense of creative thinking and thoughtfulness. The way he has composed his music over, like, he had a very short life, but in that short period of time, it's like a divine sort of music. As Tchaikovsky had once said, that it's the universe singing to you. It's the perfection of the universe. The universe is perfect in all respects, from all views. So Mozart's music is like that. So I love Mozart's pieces. The thing is, nowadays there are playlists available online. You can just start by playing the just going to YouTube and searching for Mozart, and you can just find him online, so that you can, like, start playing his different forms of music, different like, you don't need to listen to a lot of operas, because operas are like long and strenuous. There are many many short and charming pieces, small pieces. Then you have my next favorite would be a little, maybe it was very shocking for me when I first, at a very advanced age, I think it was Igor Stravinsky. He is a early 20th century composer. He's a Russian composer, and his the most famous music that you can, like, search online, especially on YouTube, would be the Rite of Spring. So Rite of Spring, it's basically it's an opera, and it's a symphonic poetry. It's a symphonic poetry, and it would be like I can assure you that if you give like half an hour of your time, you don't even have to listen to both the parts. If you listen to just the half of it, it's shocking. I mean, it would definitely be a very very big experience for people listening to orchestral music for the first time, or maybe they have not thought about it seriously. It really transcends your sense, I mean, your age and time and wherever you are. It really speaks to you, and you can understand that it's like a ritual. It's like a primeval ritual happening. I can go loads and loads about Rite of Spring. I mean, it should happen to everybody. And of course, then there's Maurice Ravel's Bolero. It's like a revelation. It will change the way you. It's really, I think Bolero. It needs to be heard. It's the same tune. The same tune is repeating over and over, with the background changing. He's a genius. Maurice Ravel is a genius. Is a French genius. I don't think anyone else could have come up with this sort of music. I mean, if you can compare, I don't think anyone comes close to Maurice Ravel. And then there's the Russian great again, Tchaikovsky. I mean, Swan's Lake, and he's the Nutcracker, and
Yes.
there are like so many suits of Tchaikovsky. They're charming. You don't need to know the backstory. You don't need to know the why this is happening. If you just like close your eyes and just like put on your cans and just listen to Tchaikovsky's music, you would definitely feel ennobled, because classical music, as it said, that it ennobles, it brings the noblest of humanity in us. It's our own reflection of humanity. Music, written music, which when performed live on stage, of course nowadays you can't have live stage score like music because of the
Mm.
pandemic. But I think very soon, when the operas, when the orchestras start performing again, it's going to be, it's fantastic, and it should go on for ages and ages. And that's what's happening. I mean, look at the my first my first listening experience was not Mozart. I first got to listen to, I think by mistake, somebody gave me a cassette of, or left the cassette of Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. And
Okay. Goodness.
and, uh, I learned later that he was the most energetic of the. He had 20
Mm.
children. I mean, like I can understand if you listen to Bach's music. If any child listens to Bach's music, for example, there are plenty of music available for Bach, and all of them have the vigor. And he is this 16th century music composer who would just rob you of your senses of time and space. You would just transform you if you listen to any one of, I can't remember the name right now, but I think it's, what is it called, I just like get back to you on that. Each of his pieces are like short pieces, not like very long. It's like short pieces of music. There's they're beautiful. They're like really, you start humming them immediately. The way it's structured, it's so fast, you can almost see yourself in the stage as a conductor of that sort of music. So Bach is definitely, you must, of course, it's baroque music, it's chamber music, it's very old fashioned form of music. It's not Mozart, it's not Tchaikovsky, of course, but there is a beauty in that. I'm trying to say, like Bendel of his time, and
Mm.
other German composers, the German Grey, Austrian composers, all of them came from that part of the world, which, because they were all court composers. Back in those days, they used to perform for the national, orchestra in front of kings and queens and emperors. It would be a lot of history, of course, in that, but you don't need to know any of that. Just listen to the tapes, and or listen to the online recordings, and you would understand what I'm saying, and it would transform. And I guarantee any parent listening, any teacher listening right now, I can guarantee you that this form of music would definitely transform the structure of a child's thinking. Definitely transform it. I've seen it myself. And it's been said, there are studies, there are study groups who are dedicated to these things, and they've said that Mozart's music, I mean, very cheesy, corny line, but it goes like the Mozart's music makes babies smarter. So it's not an overstatement. It's definitely there. I recommend that. I want to see that kind of thing happening. Unfortunately, in our country, there's not much demand for orchestral music and conservatories. We don't have many choirs or symphony orchestra or bands, symphony band. Like in the West, people like in schools, they have their own symphony bands. I mean,
Mm.
people, small children who are playing cellos and violins, and they're doing the timpani. They're the drummers, the classical drummers, or the acoustic guitars, the classical guitar. We don't have it here, and that sort of education is not here or is not encouraged. I think we should, and we should go to organizations and institutions where people can start appreciating classical music, because it's something that survived. We have to understand. Nothing else has survived. I don't think the playlists that you were mentioning today would
Yes.
survive 400-500 years. I
No,
don't.
they
And
wouldn't. They
the
wouldn't.
best part is, Vaishali, I think it's like, it's all written music. Nobody
Mm.
recorded it. There was no recording back then. It's written music, it's performed music. Like, for example, there's this I think he's a French composer, once again. Offenbach. He's known for can music. I know that's like, it's a very sleazy sort of music, but the music itself is not at all that way. The music is very exciting. You can go to YouTube and search for Cotton Eye Joe, which was a very it was a
Right.
very famous group in the
Yes.
90s. They had a song called, like, by the group called Rednecks. They had this Cotton Eye Joe. So there is can. It's based on the can music, and the can music is basically a piece by Offenbach. And Offenbach has created some great music for the orchestra. I mean, for common people, it was like very popular music. It was not like, and you can understand, there's no recording of this. Nobody knew that this kind of artist, this guy, he was a composer. He was a very established composer back in the day, but nobody remembers him. But now, if you play his music, if a choir or a symphony orchestra, they kind of perform can music, you will see the response, the kind of response people have. It's electric. So if something like that can survive 100 and 200 years, I think that is
Mm.
there to stay. I mean, current playlists, we don't get to see Charlie Puth's sheet music. We don't see Billie Eilish's sheet music, because most of it is basically songs which are video songs, which are made for
Yeah.
videos, which are made for visuals, which have some cinematic tale attached to them. Of course, so were the symphony orchestras. They were orchestral poems. They were written to orchestra. For example, the composer that I mentioned a few minutes earlier, Igor Stravinsky, he wrote a very famous Russian opera. It's very famous. It's called The Firebird. If you
Mm.
ever like heard of the Firebird, it's the Firebird suite. It's like a great Russian composition. And it's written for the opera. There are whole passages where there's no movement at all, just a few flutes and saxophones or the trumpets playing through, because it's written for the theater. It's written for the Russian opera.
Yes, I was
So
just coming to that. I was just coming to that because orchestral music somehow it kind of gives you a story. It gives you a narrative that you have to follow. And there's a lot of
absolutely.
people are writing comments, and there's a lot of debate happening between Western classical music and Hindustani classical music.
Oh yes.
So yeah, so maybe I can come in over here because I've had a little bit of Hindustani classical training.
Oh yes.
Uh, and I'll give you something that my father used to do, and this is for all the parents who are watching. Um, my father, we never woke up for our school to an alarm clock ringing. My
Mm,
father would get up early and he would play a song. And I'll tell you what he used to play. We used to have these cassettes by India Today, the
yeah.
company that you work with right now, TV Today. So
Absolutely.
India Today used to produce, and they're still there on YouTube. They used to produce
Yeah.
these morning ragas, evening
Yeah.
ragas, night ragas.
Yeah.
If you remember, early morning
Yes.
ragas.
They were curated, well packaged recordings of Hindustani classical,
Yes,
recitals. Yeah.
yes, yes. And there were instrumental music, and there was instrumental music as well as ragas, like vocals. And my
Yeah.
father used to always play the music, and then we used to wake up to the music. So I'll tell you what happens if it has happened with any of us who is watching right now, is
Hmm.
that you're dreaming when you sleep, right? And you're almost
Yeah.
going to wake up because you know that you have school, so your body clock is kind of prepping you up to wake up, and then this music enters your ears, okay, and it blends with your dream, and then you start listening to the music in your dream, and then you wake up to that music. It's a wonderful
Yeah. Yeah.
experience. I cannot tell you how beautiful the experience is of listening to music and waking up to a music which is blended in into your dreams. So
Yeah.
I think that is something that one could do, is to wake up before your child wakes up
Yes.
and play some music and let the child wake up to the music rather than to the alarm clock
Absolutely.
ringing.
It's very important. I mean, and not only the morning routine. I do something like personally, I do something, I keep playing that, because my daughter is very fidgety. She's like, a sporty kind of a person. She's not a little person who doesn't have time for all these fine arts of playing piano. She would rather play ball. But what I do is I kind of try to play the psychological game of trying to play the music in the background. Like, for example, if you have, I don't know if you have, it's a very famous play by Peter Schaffer, by Amadeus. It's a play on the life of Mozart,
Yes.
and definitely a fiction. It's a historical fiction. It's not a real story, but the way Antonio Salieri, another composer, rival composer of his time, he was describing Mozart's music in that. There's a film also, a very famous Milos Forman film on that also by the same title,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you know where he's saying that Mozart's music is basically it's like he's written down dictation, he's taken down dictation from it's like a divine thing that came down. It's not really a composer's thing. It's really what he did was not really a composition. It was like taking dictation down. So why do I mention this play is basically playing psychologically. There's a scene in that movie or the play where a complete novice, basically a church, I think he was a father, he was a some kind of a clergyman, and he came for a confession to this person, Antonio Salieri, and he said, do you recognize this tune? And he played the tune on the piano. He couldn't recognize it. Okay, this was written by me. And he said, I'm so sorry, I couldn't recognize it. And he played another tune. Do you recognize this? This was very popular back in the day. He said, no, I cannot recognize this tune either, because I don't follow classical music that much. And then he played, oh, you must remember this. Then he played the Eine Nacht Musik. It was bum 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 bum, and instantly the clergyman, he understood that music, and he said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I know that. I'm very proud that you wrote this." Well, I didn't. He said that I didn't. It's written by Amadeus Mozart. So you can understand that you must have heard wherever you are, even if you're living in a cave, if you're in a country in a country like some of the African countries, you must have heard Mozart's pieces. I mean, some or the other. Like in India, we like instantly. I can say instantly if I say dum da da dum da da dum da 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 dum da 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 da. Instantly, people will come up with the watch brand because it's
Yeah.
so hardcore in their minds for like decades. So that kind of thing, Mozart has that influence on you. It's
Mm.
wrong to say that classical music is dead. No one listens to classical music anymore. There's no reason why young people. I think that the next generation would be they're going to be music buffs. They would like not only just listen to music, they would read music. I'm waiting for that age to come. It's a parent
Oh,
thing. You must inculcate these things.
yeah.
Yeah,
Debarjo, I think there are many people who are already asking questions. I think you can
yeah,
all start asking more questions, but I have to
yeah,
talk to you about this. It's very important. We were
yeah.
talking about certain music pieces or certain
Oh,
music frequencies, sound frequencies, which
yeah,
help you, you know, think better, maybe think more creatively, or maybe calm your senses down. Could you tell us a
yeah.
little bit about these sound frequencies which we can listen to?
Yes, I was very keen on this because I'm an audio enthusiast myself. I'm an audio professional, but also like I'm like the anything that has something to do with sound. I'm very interested in that, and there are many studies regarding these things. Unfortunately, I have a soundboard for you, but that does not have this. The first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about sound as a utility, I can tell you there are certain frequencies of sound. Now, by frequency, many people will be like put off. Oh, it's a science thing. It's not.
Mm.
Basically, frequency is a frequency is let's say a bird is flapping its wings. So a bird flaps its wings for a certain number of times in a second. That's like let's say it's like 10 times a second. So that 10 times a second becomes a frequency. It's represented in hertz, cycles per second, or flaps per second for that bird's thing. Now, if you look at a hummingbird, it would flap maybe hundreds of times a second. I'm not sure 100, but maybe close to that. So basically, it's flapping its wings at a much higher rate. And look at a bee. Look at a bee. It would maybe flap its wings like thousands of times a second, and that creates the sound of the bee. Like the buzzing sound that we hear is basically the buzzing of the wings,
Yes.
which creates
Wings.
sound, and that has a frequency. So by frequency, I mean a particular tone, any tone that you hear. Like the okay, on a piano, if you play a note on a piano, that has a particular frequency. If you play on a piano, there's a particular key called the key of A. If you play that A, it will produce a frequency of 440. It means 440 times per second. The speaker or the sound, the piano has to create 440 vibrations each second to create that sound. So I'm sure many people would have understood by now what is frequency. Frequency for us is just a number to represent a tone of music, a note basically. Any note that you can hear has a frequency. Even our voices have frequencies. But of course, our voices are not monophonic. So they have lots and lots of frequencies. But like, a particular instrument like a violin or maybe a piano, they have a particular frequency. So lots of things have happened with frequencies, but it's been seen that there are certain frequencies which can, uh, you know, uh, do some interesting things. Every frequency has a unique character. It plays whenever the human mind perceives the frequency, something happens in the brain. So when something happens in the brain, it's for the good or for the worse. Like, for example, when you hear noise, you're disturbed. Why? Because there's no defined frequency. There's no it's chaos. If you look at a crowded place, lots and lots of people without masks nowadays, you see you're panicked, you see a lot of noise happening, a lot of chaos happening. You don't like that. So that's noise. But if you hear a single person, maybe Vaishali singing right now, if you hear her singing, so that would be musical. So that has a frequency, particular frequency. So I'm trying to refer to that. So there's a very interesting frequency which goes by the number 532. So this 532 hertz sound, interestingly, it's just a sound. It's not a song. It's not a song. It's just a single note. It's just a single note. It has a certain quality to it.
Mhm.
If you expose yourself long enough to this frequency, it will create some alpha waves in your brain. Now, there are lots of studies. I'm not an expert. I should not say that this works all the time. But if you're willing to explore this, these are exploratory science. This is not something that's going to harm you, but it's not placebo either. It's not like something that we are supposing or imagining. It really happens. It really gets down. It really calms your mind. It really helps you gather your thoughts. But does it, you go to YouTube, type 532 hertz sound, you will get millions of results immediately. But will it, like listening to it for 5 seconds, will it do anything? No. It has to be done over a period of time. You have to get used to that kind of thing. You have to imbibe. You might have to form a habit of listening to 532 hertz. It's like a workout. It's really brain muscle. It's really developing your brain muscle. You have to work out on your 532. Similarly, there are other frequencies which have similar effects, but there are some controversies, so you have to look it up yourself. But 532 has been noted to have lots and lots of like psychological benefits, like even temporary benefits. It's like a stress buster. If you listen to 532, and there are different organs which can play these things. You go
Mhm.
to YouTube and say that I wish there was a sawtooth organ, a sawtooth 532. You have to look it up yourself. There's not much time, so I can't explain all of these things. 532 are sawtooth, 532 sine wave. So there are different qualities of this 532 hertz. But these 532 hertz sound, it definitely has a transformative effect. Just like classical music, just like Hindustani classical music, it has its effects. And why does this happens is because we are more acoustically programmed, human beings and life forms. I think we are more acoustic. Thanks for the the tag there, right there, the 532. We are more acoustically programmed to respond to certain kinds of sound. We are not aware of it, of course, but we subconsciously we respond to these things. Our bodies respond to these kinds of sounds. It's just like chanting a mantra. I mean, it doesn't need to be religious in, like, for that matter, but it has to be. The chanting creates a certain form of, like, chanting the Om, for example. It's a very scientific thing. If you look at the structure of Om, I got it very late, pretty late in life. I thought it was just a single, a single inscription, a single symbol, but it's not. It's basically, the sound is not a single simple thing. It comprises of O, U, and M, like Om. It comes from it comes from your, the thorax, the lower part of your body, your abdomen,
Yeah,
and it goes.
some also say that it starts with A, so it's AUM, Aum, because I've
Om,
seen that
Om,
written in many
right,
many photographs
right.
and posters.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah,
Om. And since I'm a voice artist, many voice artists will tell you there are three voices. When I started out, I thought I only had one voice, but actually there are three voices. One is a body voice, one is a, your chest voice, one is a middle, this kind of mid-range voice, and another one is a head voice, which is a very high frequency voice. It actually, this part of our head is known as a cranium. The cranium. This part is known as a cranium. So that is a cranium voice. It's very high pitched. It gives the feeling of it gives the feeling of, panic. But this voice, if we go deep, like the abdominal voice, which comes from deep thoracic voice, it's really very calming and soothing. But this voice that is, which comes from the mid range, which is somewhere near the throat or something, it's the conversational voice. We sometimes need to project ourselves. Like, maybe
yes,
we can't hear. So basically, this voice is required from time to time. But when you're screaming at the top of your voice, it means we are using the cranial voice. So these things, if you note now, that the single letter, I'm not sure if you can see, I think you're seeing it inverted, like in Tenet. You're seeing this inverted. The Om sign of Om is basically the sound of Om basically comprises of all three voices: the thoracic voice, the mid range voice, and the head voice, the cranial voice. It's such a marvel of, I don't know who created this. It's such a marvel of, literature, that this thing was encoded or written down. Written music, it's like it transcended time once again. So it's
yes,
written down. He wrote it and attached a sound to it, and people have been chanting it for years and years, and it really opens up your voice. If you're a voice actor,
it
or
does.
if you
It
want to
does.
impress people, this is a great way to, develop your voice at a very early age. Like, I didn't have a very deep voice when I was a young boy, but, if you do this from an early age, from a very early age, if you, you start doing something like, Om. If you start this, if you chant Om every day, I'm sorry, it sounded horrible, but if you do this every day, your voice, whatever you're doing, you don't have to sing, or you don't have to be a voice actor, but your voice will definitely open up. The vocal cord and the machinery, the whole, the thorax, it really develops and gets used to this kind of frequency, because it has multiple frequencies. As I said, with
Mhm.
the 532, it's a single frequency, but Om has multiple frequencies. There's different harmonies playing in. So if you do this every day, preferably, if somebody, like an elderly person, is with the child, and if they can do this every day, they can chant the Om. I'm sorry, I'm not. I have no. I don't know any other sounds like Om. I only know about Om. This really helps to develop your voice. It helps you to structure your voice very. It opens up your vocal cords. It makes your voice
Yes, it
deeper,
does.
not only
Yeah.
like a baritone. You don't have to have a Morgan Freeman kind of voice, but, your voice really develops as a person. You really
Mhm.
sound very interesting if you do this over and over again, and it has helped me. It has helped me in my profession. It has helped me personally. I have benefited from it. You don't have to do it every day, but if you are in the habit of doing chanting the Om at least 4 or 5 times, I think it does the trick.
Yeah, Joe, when we're talking about sound and the pitch, because that
Yeah.
kind of really is important. When parents or
Mhm.
teachers
Mhm.
speak,
Yeah.
do you think a particular voice space on the voice register, if they could use to communicate to their children, because you know uh, you a lot can be done by just changing your voice pitch. I've never never heard my father raise his voice. He's never had to raise
Yeah.
his voice. Even if he had
Very,
to kind of scold us, he would
very
really
lucky.
go
You're very
low pitch and just say it, and we would get it. Whereas my mom, she
so
would
you
scream
had a
and
you
we would
have
listen to her.
you had a very happy childhood. Yeah, the same with us. The same thing happens. Yeah, it's very important to use that tone with, especially with children. If you
Mm,
want them to be, of course, like firmness doesn't have anything else to do with, strictness and firmness doesn't have anything to do with the exertion of the voice, the cranial voice, which our moms basically use all the time. Like, you just have to get this done. You have to. Why didn't you log in? Why didn't you do this? So that cranial voice creates panic, a lot of stress in children, and
yeah,
definitely it creates a sense of, creates a lot of nervous energy, which is good, but it's not always. It becomes useless after some point of time when the child really recognizes that it doesn't need to
yes.
be responded to in a very urgent way, but
Mm,
a very deep voice that. Why isn't this done? From time to time I have to talk to my daughter, about getting things done. I don't. I do the. I do the, like, the Morgan Freeman thing. You think it's a joke that we have not finished this yet? You think you think your mom is you think your mom you think your mom mom is, like, is not serious about it. Mom is serious. I'm not serious, but I'm trying to, put up that creates a lot of nervous energy in the child. I've seen
mm,
it. I just saw this a few days back in Pankaj Tripaঠি's interview on one of
mm,
his web series. I think he says that मैं कुछ भी कर सकता हूँ मेरी वॉइस से। मुझे कुछ ज्यादा करने की जरूरत नहीं है। विलन बनने के लिए मुझे कुछ ज्यादा करने की जरूरत नहीं है। मैं बस अपनी आवाज से कर सकता हूँ। मैं यहाँ बैठे बैठे कर सकता हूँ। शांत आवाज में मैं कर सकता हूँ। So that is very
mm.
important to use a very low register to make the child understand, because they are not, one thing we, like, sometimes as adults are growing up in the this kind of society where things are demanded and things have to be done at the drop of a hat. We kind of miss the fact that children don't have to give a damn. They're not, like, they don't have to do it. They don't have to listen to us. They don't have to. There's no reason why I have to, like, show up at work every day, otherwise I'll get fired. But my child doesn't have to wake up every day morning, or do the chores, because we really have to make it important for them. And it's a very, very, I think it's the biggest performance we have to do, be a very realistic performance. It's like method acting. You have to learn that.
All right. Oh my God, it's already
Oh, yes.
7:58.
Oh,
I
God.
don't have time. I don't have time for taking questions at all, but I will take this question. Shashwat is asking, Western
Mhm.
classical music is hard coded by nature, whereas Indian classical music is 90% improvised. So, which is better for our purpose of creative thinking?
I think these are definitely different ways of, ways of, like, there's no one. I don't, in my understanding, there's no one way to achieve a particular thing that we are going for. They're both approaches. Like, for example, in physics, there's this thing called, like, you look at one perspective, but there are three other perspectives. In general theory of general relativity, there are five different ways of looking at reality. So
Hmm.
each way has its definite purpose and means of achieving the same thing. even in medicines. I mean, in medicine, you can do the same thing. Pfizer has done something and Moderna has done something. So all of them are trying to achieve this one thing to do with the pandemic. They're trying to get rid of this virus, but they can be achieved. So Hindustani classical music, and I think in Pandit Ravi Shankar's words, absolutely, as Shashwat has said, very importantly, that it's 90% improvised. There's no written down text that will tell you that you need to do this. It's improvised music. And in improvisational music, that's something you have to train yourself for years and years. As a classically trained artist, you know that you have to get trained. And in Ravi Shankar's word, there are no staccato notes. You see, there are no notes in Indian classical music. There's no A, C, D, E, C, D, E. There's no such thing. You have to be slurry. You have to move from one note to the other in a very organic way. So that's why we have the meers and the in betweens.
Yeah.
It's much
The
more.
points were, yeah.
Yeah. There's no definite fret. This has this note on this fret, this note on this fret, like a guitar. It does not work out like that in Hindustani classical music, and it's definitely improvised, and definitely it has its own benefits, I think. But Western classical music is organized music. It's something that we have to keep in mind, that it's structured music, it's written down music. It's something that hundreds and hundreds of performers will perform all at the same time. All of them are playing it at the same time. You need a definite different training for that, discipline for that. So each has its own way of achieving greatness, and I think having a healthy mix of both would be like a balanced diet. It has to be, I don't want to use the word consumed, but it has to be, administered every day in our everyday lives. We have to have a healthy
Yes.
like thing of both, because we now live in a very global world, and we have to be open to Hindustani classical music as well as Western classical music. Although I'm a little biased towards Western classical.
That's pretty evident, Debarjo.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so Radha was asking, so Western music on one side, can you suggest Indian music to soothe? As I just mentioned, you can listen to any Ravi Shankar piece, any Ustad Allah Rakha piece. You can listen to
Ali Akbar
any
Khan.
yeah, Ali Akbar
Bismillah
Khan
Khan.
piece. Yeah, so I think and listen to any Bhimshen Joshi piece, any
Uh,
in fact,
Pandit Yashraj. If you listen to Pandit
yeah,
Yashraj's music, Pandit
yeah.
Yashraj, one last thing I just want to add, that Pandit Yashraj's music has been transformed into Western Symphony by Sharang Dev, and it's amazing. If you listen to that music, I don't remember the name of that song, but I mean that piece. But it's a raga that he's developed for years and years. It's a, I think it's a thought of some kind, and
Hmm.
if you listen to that, it's transformative. It's like it's been transformed into, coupled with symphony orchestral music by Sharang Dev.
All right. So I think Radha and everybody who's been asking about Western classical music and Hindustani classical music, I think you start anywhere. Just start. Just start.
And and more importantly, I just want to Vaishali, I would like to say that it doesn't matter what you are trying to instill in your child, or the like our next generation of little people. I just want to see a environment of encouragement.
Hmm.
Encouragement is the key. If you don't even if you don't feel like it, if you encourage your child in a particular way, you're going to see results. Encouragement is the key. Encouragement, and throughout,
Thank
it's
you
very
so
important.
much, Debarjo, for joining us and joining us
Absolutely.
from my land, Kolkata. And I'm missing Kolkata very, very much at the moment. But thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for telling
Thank
us so
you.
much about Western classical music, orchestral music, and the importance of music in our lives, generally
Absolutely.
as people. and as for children. Thank you, everybody who tuned in today. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and please share this particular video, this particular conversation that we have had with your friends and family who still need to get introduced to music. Thank you so much, and have a very good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.